Alright, hello everybody, it's Claire, and I'm back with another one of these things. Uh, I'm sorry if I'm a bit quiet, my throat's kind of fucked right now, so just turn me up, I guess. So I made one of these things last season. It's just a breakdown of players. To briefly go over what I have here, we have the total player list right here, with captains included, although I've crossed them out on this page. And all the players who have put at least a 5 on their role preference are just as they are, and some players I went and added, or I guess altered their role preferences a little because they didn't include a 5. Um, and then on this page we just have anyone that put a 4 or a 5 for a role is included in that column. So here's everyone that put a 4 or 5 for pause 1, pause 2, pause 3, pause 4, pause 5. Um, but not quite everyone, because of course this season's a little different. We're doing a fall through draft, which means that for this first draft coming up tonight, captains can pick from any of the 80 players, I think it is, in the pool. And so to keep things just a little realistic, I've gone ahead and cut it off at 49 players. It was originally going to be 50, but I forgot I had a header, so it's 49 now. Which I decided was fine because Blackout said he only wanted to play lower on his division preference. So that's what it is. We have 49 players, 40 of which will be picked, including the 8 captains, who I guess are already picked. Um, so there is a bit of excess on this list. Uh, so I guess I'll just briefly give my opinions on it. And if you don't want to hear those, you can just close this video and open up this sheet and look at the player list and come to your own conclusions. But I'll just briefly give my thoughts. So first of all, because it's a fall through draft, roles don't actually matter all that much. It's not as big of a deal. You aren't going to get to the end of the draft and say, oh, the only players, like there's only 3 players left and none of them play pause 3, right? You're going to get to the end of the draft and there's going to be 43 players left. And even if the 3 highest don't play pause 3, you can just reach a little below and you should get one, in theory. So that's not as important as it was last season or as it will be in the lower division draft. But there are still some things to look at. There is differences in the pools between um, the different positions. And so, first off, I guess I'll just talk about that. One kind of interesting thing to notice is that pause 3 just there kind of stops being players at a certain point. You'll notice most of these are all going down to like the 2600, 2500 area, because that's about where I cut it off as at. But offlane doesn't really have that. If we go back to the player list here, highlight the offlane column, um, there is actually this section like right here from about 3000 mmR to just over 2000 mmR where there's not a lot of people. There's only one player that's put any interest in playing offlane, and that's actually a pause 5 main, who's just put a lot of 4s down. So it is worth noting, I guess, that there are not a lot of sub 3k offlaners. So if you aren't able to snag one of these offlane players, you're gonna be in a little bit of a pinch, I guess. You're either gonna have to have someone off roll, or you're gonna have to have a very low MR player that you maybe wouldn't have wanted to normally draft. Um, the other thing to note, I think, is that in the pause 1 pool is where a lot of our very high MMR players are. We have Yolk and Scroom both putting themselves as safe lane only. We also have Roar, TK Phantom, um, Adam and Ping, who are all 4K players, putting themselves as potentially pause 1. Um, these players are signed up for multiple roles. We have the legend again. If they're bold, they're also a mid, and this only applies for the cores. If they're bold, they're also a mid, and if they're italicized, they're both 1 and 3. So Roar is both. Midsection doesn't get anything. Just believe me. And the captains are purple, so Yop's up here as well, even though he's not pickable. So there's a lot of high MMR pause 1s to choose from, which is interesting. Obviously, not everyone will get one, and some of these players, I think like Adam, is probably realistically going to go mid. He's a 5 for mid and a 4 for pause 1. I think giving himself a 4 for pause 1 is a little generous, but that's more my subjective opinion. So yeah, I think that's the primary interest in the roles. I have some other numbers here that also exist. The amount of unique cores in this section here, 1, 2, 3, is 37. Keep in mind with 8 teams, you would only need 24, I think, right? 3 times 8? Yeah. So there's more than enough cores to go around. Not all these players are actually core mains, of course. There are going to be some players that are maybe support mains. I think the dude put a 4 for all the core roles. I actually put a 5 for pause 1, that's interesting. But he is primarily a pause 4 player, for example. But there's a lot of cores, so it really shouldn't be a problem at all for people to get the cores. I know last season there was like an excess of supports, and it was kind of funky, and I think there were multiple teams that had support players playing core. But this season it should be fine. The support only players there's actually not a lot of. And this is probably a lot to do with the fact that it's a bit higher MMR, and a lot of these players, there's a lot less of these, like, I think there's just a lot of like lower MMR support mains that were attracted to this league for some reason. I think a lot of them maybe came from like RD2L, LD2L, where they were just used to playing pause 5 because that's what they play in other leagues. But not so much this season. There's actually only 12 players that have put support only. And then 3 of those are specifically pause 5 only. And there's not a single player that said only pause 4. There was no scrub this season. He's the only one that does that, so every player that has put pause 4 has also put at least one other role, because pause 4 players are monkeys. The offlane pool, for players that are exclusively offlane, there's only 3. I believe that's Lava, Elim, and Jackman. There's 3 additional players who put both offlane and support, which means the total amount of offlaners that did not put themselves for any 1-2 role comes down to only 6. So I think there could be a little bit of a battle over offlaners this season, to be honest. This massive drop off after 3000 MMR, combined with the fact that a lot of these players are probably going to realistically be preferred on other roles. Like I think Phantom, Sparkle Party, and this is just my personal opinion, are at least 2 players that come to mind that are probably going to end up on a pause 1 role or a pause 2 role maybe for Sparkle Party. There's also a lot of captains in here, I guess I should mention. Lava and Bibleman will probably definitely be pause 3. But Wolfs and Fireman, I don't know. These players could actually end up on a different role. Wolfs has been playing a lot of pause 4 recently. Fireman also plays pause 1. So, yeah. Offlane looks a little slim. And the other thing is the total money. There's just under 7,000 fluffers between all 8 captains, which means that the average player price comes to just over 212. And I guess this will segue into my final group of thoughts on this. Because this is fall through draft, I think the amount of money being spent on players is going to be different than last season. Last season, I made some predictions on how much each player should go for, and a lot of them were too high. I said there were players that I thought would be going for like 700, 800, and I think in reality only one player went for 700, and that was Phantom. And part of that is because I'm actually, I think, used to fall through draft. And one of the big differences with fall through is that the floor is just not very low. So if you run out of money and you're getting like the bottom of the barrel players, you're still getting high 2K players, potentially 3K players. Whereas last season, if you ran out of money, you were getting like Guardians and Heralds. And I think that led captains to be a lot more careful with their money, where they didn't want to completely run out and end up with a bunch of Heralds. But this season, it really shouldn't matter as much. I think we should at least be seeing a much more like exponential chart on player cost, where I think the players that everyone wants, the core players that you look at and you say, yeah, this player is very good, I think those players will actually be going for a lot of money this season. I think we'll be seeing there's less money overall, so I don't think we'll necessarily be seeing a lot of 800s. But I think we'll see at least one player go for like 800. I think we'll see some more in the like 600 range. Yeah. I should also, I guess, mention that the money of the richest captain is lower than last season, so they shouldn't actually necessarily be higher costs than last season. But relative to the amount of money in the pool, I think we'll be seeing like a lot more captains go kind of broke very early, because at the end of the day, if you can get a player like Scroomlight, for example, like you get a player for Scroomlight and you don't have much money anymore, you're still like realistically getting like maybe another 3K core and then a couple 2K supports, depending on which captain we're talking about here. And I think you feel fine with that. Whereas if you hold your money and you lose out on all the top players, you kind of just end up with a bunch of 3K players. And you gotta have to ask yourself, would you rather have a bunch of 3K players, or would you rather have just like one really big all-star 4K player and then a couple high 2Ks? And I think for most captains, especially with how like fast the MMR drops off, where we do have a few players, and I know like FJ, Yolk Soup, maybe not like super renowned for their core play, but at least with players I think like Scroomlight, Roar, um, maybe Phantom and Adam, I think these are players that probably should have a lot of worth on them. They're players that are known to be good, known to carry games. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my thought on fall through there. I imagine there won't actually be that many players going for 200. I think there will be a lot of like 400 plus, and then a lot of 100 and under players. But we'll see how it goes. It kind of depends how captains choose to do it. Um, so yeah, I don't think I have much else to say. I'll link this sheet in the description in case anyone wants to look at it, and I'll do another one for the lower division where this kind of breakdown should be a lot more important because there is a limited amount of players. But all right, for now, peace. I apologize to anyone that was hoping for a 2-hour video again. I have saved you.